Hello there. The following series of videos is for students of Leaving Certificate Classical Studies. My narrative is based on a cover-to-cover reading of Mortimer Wheeler's book Roman Art and Architecture. In this video, we are going to look at Wheeler's commentary on Roman wall paintings. The Romans were just as fussy about interior decorating as we are. Like suburban homes today, a typical Roman domus conformed to the same rough plan. Houses were built of brick and as such the walls could not take the strain left by too many voids. Thus windows tended to be small. Also, Roman houses tended to be built around our garden, usually with the covered walkway around it called the peristylium. The main living quarters in a Roman domus were downstairs, where it was cooler, thus security was also an issue. In industrial cities like Pompeii, where the streets were narrow and noisy, houses tended to be inward-looking, illuminated by impluvia, or skylights, and as a result tended to be quite dark. The Romans painted their walls so as to make their rooms seem bigger, brighter, warmer and more lavish. In essence they wanted to create the illusions of space, light, warmth and wealth. We still decorate our homes today for the same reasons. Would you like to live in a house like this? So where would you usually find wall paintings in a Roman house? Like us, the Romans tended to concentrate their decorating to the more publicly accessible rooms of their homes. You wouldn't decorate your garage or your closet, would you? Romans tended not to bother decorating storerooms either, and because they had slaves to do the cooking, the culina or kitchen was also bare. The latrina, or toilet, if they had one, was generally a smelly place. Not a place you would want to stay for very long, so again, it wasn't painted. The atrium however served as a kind of foyer or hall. It's where visitors were greeted. A client might be brought through to the tablinum, or study, which would have to impress. A guest might stay for dinner in the triclinium and you would hope they liked more than just the food. On a hot day, you might even invite your guest in to take some wine under the peristyle of the garden, and again, the view was important. Private rooms, known as conclaves, were often used as bedrooms. Without wall paintings they were dark, claustrophobic places, but with the right decoration, anywhere can be made homely. So the next question is, how were they made? Well, the technique is called buon fresco, and it hasn't changed much since Roman times. First, the bare walls were faced in concrete.
Now, Tony, you ready to go?
Yup.
Right, so how did they make the walls here?
Well, they started off with the chalk, the local limestone. Right?
Okay.
If you take that and you heat it in the kiln until it's red hot,
Yeah.
it loses a lot of weight,
Yes.
and it becomes what's called quicklime.
Okay.
It's called quick because it's very reactive.
Okay, so what does that look like?
Well, it looks exactly the same.
Right.
But we've got the specimen here which has been crushed,
Okay.
and if we take that and we add water to it, you'll see what happens.
Okay, so it's one shovelful.
Well, let's put a couple of
Okay,
shovels.
you're
Let's
on.
be
Okay,
generous.
how much water?
Oh, enough to make it just look wet at the moment. It's now boiling. You can see that? Look.
Yes.
It's actually boiling. There's steam coming off it. And what's happening is that the weight which was lost, which was carbon dioxide, is now being replaced with water. And that is the stuff that the Romans used to mix with sand. You mix that with sand, and that produces your mortar.
Right, so this is now slaked lime.
That's now slaked lime, hydrated lime. It's now a lime mortar. It's a bit wet actually, isn't it? What they used to do was to take one part of that
Right.
to 3 parts of sand.
So if I take three, so that would make the sort of mortar they've used here.
the sort of mortar.
And shall I start mixing it?
Oh yes, please do. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Lime mortar was widely used with flint or other rocks, but the Romans came up with another ingredient that turned it into quick-setting concrete.
what the Romans discovered was that they had a volcanic ash, which came from Puteoli,
Right.
which is north of Naples.
Yep.
There are other places it comes from, and that's some of the stuff.
This stuff?
there. Yes. Then you get a mixture which will set all by itself, and it'll even set underwater.
In fact, water is a vital part of the chemical reaction which turns this into a solid.
So we're going to fill this mould you've made,
Yeah, we haven't got enough there to fill it up, but
No, but we
do
can
it
start.
for a start. There you are.
and then we can make a triumphal arch.
We hope. Yeah.
So, by adding volcanic ash, the Romans had hit upon the secret of fast-setting concrete, which, like its modern equivalent, also sets underwater.
That's set really well. The water doesn't seem to have bothered it at all.
When the walls were ready, The painter added the painting layer of plaster. After an hour or so, painting would begin.
The essence of fresco painting is very, very simple. Just the raw powdered pigment, bit of water, and unlike oil painting where the oil holds the pigment together, and this, it's a surface you paint on, the plaster itself becomes the binder.
Some fresco pigments were readily available in Italy. Reds and browns for instance came from the clay of Umbria, which is rich in ochre, iron oxide, or rust. The yellows and oranges came from the ochre-rich soil in Tuscany. The clay of Padua was rich in copper oxide which gave terra verde, green. Pulverized charcoal yielded black. Chalk dust made white, but ultramarine blue was expensive. It was either made from imported lapis lazuli from Afghanistan or Egyptian quartz. Purple was a secretion of the murex sea snail, native to Phoenicia, Lebanon. In fact, the Greek word phoenike actually means purple.
Fresco painting is a race against the clock. The hot weather means the artists have just a few hours before the plaster becomes too dry to paint. They must work at speed and get everything right first time, every time, and start all over again.
Wall painting was therefore a highly skilled job, and since mistakes were so costly, individual painters relied on repertoires of work. One might specialize in mythic scenes whereas another executed still life scenes. Next, we have to ask, where were the paintings found? When a building is left to go to ruin, the decor is the first to go. Walls can stay standing for centuries but eventually they will crumble. However, wall paintings are prone to attack by moisture, frost damage in winter and fungal molds in summer. Wall paintings consequently tend to fall off a wall after a century or so. That's assuming the building is simply abandoned rather than destroyed or burnt. Owing to the standard of preservation of Roman buildings, we have precious few wall paintings, but happy accidents like the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in AD 79 preserved whole buildings and their contents in a time capsule beneath the pumice and ash. Consequently, most of the Roman wall paintings that survive today come from Pompeii, Herculaneum and the harbour at Stabiae, which were buried by the cataclysmic eruption in AD 79. How are they categorized? Since most of the wall paintings we have come from Pompeii, they are grouped into 4 loose styles or fashions called Pompeian styles. The first, or imitation style. The second, or architectural style. The third, or ornamental style, and finally the fourth, or theatrical style. By analyzing the style we can determine a wall painting's approximate date. This method of dating is, however, less accurate for the few wall paintings that survive from outside Pompeii and its surroundings. Let's have a look at the first Pompeian style. It lasted from circa 150 to circa 80 BC and is also known as the imitation style. The Romans obviously wanted to emulate the lavish interiors of public buildings, such as temples, basilicas and bathhouses, but could not afford the masonry, so instead, they had imitation panels painted onto the walls. Wheeler calls this trompe l'oeil, which means trick of the eye. We're still at it today. Do you have imitation marble in your kitchen? The next video will take you through the second, or architectural style.